it down that
Oh,
way.
I thought you were saying it fell.
No, they
Oh
set
my
they
gosh.
set it down that way so they could work back there, but they didn't contact
They didn't
anybody.
contact any of us, yeah.
They just
Look, they
came.
built something in the fire alarm.
Yeah, that box back there took away the top wall,
Sorry.
which is where the screen was.
You know.
sitting.
Okay, we're going live.
Would you like some credit?
Here. Oh, I know what you're talking about. I said it.
We will begin momentarily. Let's see it. Our slide advancer is gone.
I'd set it right here with the other remote.
Yeah, I had it. Hello, everyone.
Oh, are we on?
We are live. We're ready to start the service, but somehow I have to find a way to advance our slides.
And as we gather with that, you might notice that we're scooching some things around. Thanks for your patience and good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Toledo's live stream.
Let's
Grab a
ring
cup
the
of
bell.
coffee. Yeah.
And I'll be back in one moment.
Wherever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Wherever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Wherever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Wherever you Thank you so much for joining us this morning on our live broadcast. I want to take a moment in our announcements to urge any members of our congregation who haven't sent in their votes, please vote on the 4 items from our annual meeting and mail your ballots back to the church. We look forward to seeing all of those Every Vote members.
And there's something that I need to say as well in our welcome. We are having services in our sanctuary, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us here in person, all of us involved with making the Sunday service happen. So we are not having in-person worship for quite a while. We're waiting until science and medicine let us know that it is all right for groups of people to be together. And thank you, Rich. And with that, some of you might have seen on Channel 11 and Channel 36 last night and this morning, there was a little video about the Toledo Unitarians choosing not to open at this time when there seems to be much excitement of some congregations coming back together. And we are not one of those. We put more stock in science and medicine. and realize that it is still dangerous. One of the things that the announcer said was that our congregation does not plan to have in-person services until next year. That was a little bit of a reach. The context is that the Unitarian Universalist Association and the president of the UUA, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, did send all congregations a note saying that we need to be cautious and be wise, and that there is the possibility that services may not resume until May 2021. But that is not an order from the congregation. Congregations have complete choice on when to have meetings. We have had some talks among the board and the people planning the Sunday services and other people about when we might come together. And right now, it seems that what we're leaning toward is to have summer services only live stream as we have since, when was it? March 15th was our first. So we would continue that. And if conditions are good for our in-gathering the Sunday after Labor Day, then we might be able to come together. That would be my ideal, but we don't know if that's going to happen. Still all depends on science. We don't want to put your lives in danger by coming in when one of the ways that this disease is spread is by people who show no symptoms and don't realize themselves that they are sick. So we don't want to catch that within our congregation. We've been doing well, let's keep at it. And the other thing to say is we're in a different position today because there has been some work done on our sanctuary. There was a construction crew in here. Unfortunately, it involved the area where we normally have our Sunday service. So we came in this morning, saw that things were awry, and had to improvise and move here. So instead, we have stained glass. We have a different screen that I hope will stay up. It is perched a little precariously, Mickey, so please be careful. And we get to see Bonnie ourselves, and perhaps you will too today, rather than her being entirely in the back. So, with all of those announcements, welcome. We're glad you're here. Let me give you opening words. These will be from Kathleen McTeague. We've now had a good taste of spring this year, and especially this weekend, it seems that we're trying out summer mode. We've seen beautiful blossoms, and some of us have already had a full season of sneezing from the hay fever, from the allergies. Tomorrow is Memorial Day, the unofficial start of summer, though the calendar delays the season until June 20th. Graduations and vacations might have been on the schedule, but they're pretty much online only now, aren't they? With car parades instead of people being close together. We're outdoors when we can be, and I hope with masks ready to reduce the possibility of coronavirus contact. Clean clothes are starting to go on the line, and special meals come from the backyard grill. We're shifting into summer mode, maybe thinking about which thick book might accompany us this season in our reimagining the next time and reimagining rest time. I hope we also recognize the spirituality that the world has in front of us. And as we're here today, in the words of Kathleen McTeague, we come together this morning. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together.
And as we light our chalice, we have some words by Albert Schweitzer. As we light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, please join me in saying the words of Albert Schweitzer that are projected on the screen. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us.
And now please join me in reciting our covenant. And this actually is on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And we have an opening song. It's number 124, Be That Guide, and we will have lyrics on the screen. Story time, and what we're going to try today is Nikki is going over to the computer to connect. We have a video story that we are able to use under the Creative Commons license, so there is copyright permission for this. Since this is a service on books and reading, this is a kid's book, A Book for Puchku by Deepanjana Paul and illustrated by Rajiv Ipe. And let's see if we can be able to show that we are able to use under Creative Commons license, so there is copyright permission.
A book for Puchku, written by
service on books and reading. This is a kid's book, A Book for Puchku by Deepanjana Paul and illustrated by Rajiv Ipe. And let's see if we can be able to show that we are able to use under Creative Commons license, so there is
illustrated by
copyright.
A book for Puchku, written by
Books and reading. This is a kid's book, A Book for Puchku by Deepanjana Paul and illustrated by Rajiv Ipe. And let's see if we can be able to show that we are able to use under Creative Commons license, so there is
illustrated
copyright.
A book for Puchku, written by
Books and reading. This is a kid's book, A Book for Puchku by Deepanjana Paul and illustrated by Rajiv Ipe. And let's see if we can be able to that we are able to
There is still one problem though. She is too short and the bookshelf is too tall. How can Puchko get up there? Maybe she can use a washing line or Ma's sari to climb. How about the chairs and tables in the room? Puchko whispers in delight. There is still one.
So let's move on before everybody bails out of our Sunday service. As our chairs were empty. No, we didn't bail out. We were trying to make it. So please mute the speaker again. And Bonnie will play this little light, and we'll go into a little bit of the chat as we reorganize with the question, have you read any good books lately? Let us know on the chat. Bonnie. Okay. This was our anthem time.
I think we could have it, but I understand.
Since our video screen share was not going well, I don't think that we can do that today. The video, since it was pre-recorded, we can have it on our First Unitarians. We can put it on the YouTube channel and we can put it on our Facebook page. So we will share it that way, and you enjoy the anthem at your leisure. And from there, let's move into a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. And take a breath in and out, a cleansing breath, a healing breath. Tomorrow is Memorial Day, an important holiday in this nation where we remember the service and sacrifice of those who preceded us and of those among us, even here in this congregation. Memorial Day was first known as Decoration Day, honoring United States soldiers who died in military service, and was a way to help our nation reconcile after the Civil War. The holiday has become more inclusive over the years as we realize that more people give their lives in service to the nation and each other, and as we recognize those among us who serve today. We honor our veterans and active duty members of the military, peace officers and firefighters, government workers and volunteers who do what they can to contribute to the foundation, stability, and growth of our communities, states, nations, and the world. We honor those on active duty in the Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, Marines, Merchant Marine, and Navy. I'm grateful that more can serve openly, and I'm also a bit fearful that political ideology pushes people to close public service to transgender and gay people, among others, and to non-citizens, and denying them citizenship through that traditional path of patriotism. We honor reservists in all branches of the services and in the National Guard. We honor and remember veterans of the armed forces. We honor and remember those who give and have given alternative service as conscientious objectives. We honor and remember those in the Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, Vista, and others whose government work is done to help those in need or who would benefit from American assistance. We honor and remember diplomats, especially these days, the career non-political diplomats, as well as the rank and file members of national, state, and local governments whose work keeps our democracies moving. Those who carry guns, those who wield pens, and those who sacrifice themselves for our protection and way of life deserve honor on Memorial Day. Thank you. We also recognize in this meditation that we are all touched by their service, and that they are like us in our humanity. Cancer and coronavirus don't pass over those in uniform. Accidents don't discriminate. And as well, happiness can visit anyone. We're here together in this world. We honor one another, and we remember those who try to make this a better place. Let us be good to one another, help each other, and think of the strangers who can be friends. We come together in community, even in this virtual joining, to share in the challenges and celebrations of life. In this moment of silence, let us all ponder the sorrows and the needs that we have in our lives, as well as the celebrations and other joys. And let us remember those we love, those who grieve, those who need, and those around us. We'll have a full minute of silence.
Today's reading is actually lyrics to a song by Jackie Barnett and Jimmy Durant. It's called The Day I Read a Book. When I look back through life, I find lots of memories remain. Certain days stay in my mind and keep running through my brain. I remember the day that Ederle swam the channel, what a splash. I remember the Wall Street crash, or when Winchell first shouted, flash. But there's one day that I recall, though it was years ago. All my life I will remember it, I know. I'll never forget the day I read a book. It was contagious, 70 pages. There were pictures here and there, so it wasn't hard to bear. The day I read a book, it's a shame I don't recall the name of the book. It wasn't a history, I know, because it had no plot. It wasn't a mystery because nobody there got shot. The day I read a book, I can't remember when, but one of these days I'm gonna do it again.
What a Sunday. We've been moved around a little bit. We've had our technical difficulties, but we're coping. Coping is a lot of what the world is doing right now as well. So we have plenty of company. Sermon time. This is the annual auction sermon. At our 2019 auction, the bidding for a sermon based on the winner's suggestion was won by Krista Schneider, and she turned to Henry Doder for the idea of a sermon on books and reading. Henry was a beloved member of our congregation, a retired librarian who continued his book connections by putting used books up for sale in Fellowship Hall and for giving particular titles to people who he saw would have connections to the books. Henry died last May 30th, having just turned 83. I appreciate that Krista thought of Henry for the sermon topic. The suggestion of books and the spirituality of reading is not a stretch for me. Some ministry wisdom I've heard is that every preacher keeps returning to the same thing regardless of what they preach. And I think my first Books and the Spirituality of Reading sermon was in 2009, so I'm in familiar territory. Thank you, Krista and Henry. So let's begin appropriately for a books and reading talk with this opening. Once upon a time. What enchanting words, a phrase that transports. A story is coming, truth or fiction, legend or myth, fairy tale or reminiscence. Those are words that set the stage. As children, we listen to that once upon a time and imagine the people and places of the story we're told. Once upon a time, humans didn't read. But in an ancient age, someone decided to make some marks to keep count of goods, and that became writing. Then others wanted to know what the marks meant, and that became reading. Reading is a uniquely human act. Since that long ago time, reading has become central to most of humanity. We read for pleasure, at leisure, and for our survival. There was leisure to read and write as far back as the Hebrew Bible, when the stories of faith were written down after being passed along orally and told as tales for generations, long before books came to be known as we know them today. Once upon a time, there was a man named Geoffrey Chaucer. In the 1300s, he wrote down stories of characters on a pilgrimage, the tales of many people on their way to the Canterbury Cathedral. He told a story of people practicing their religion or not, of the physical trip taken on a spiritual journey. We Unitarian Universalists sometimes talk about our being on spiritual journeys. As I say it, Unitarian Universalism acknowledges that people don't all have the same route or even the same destination, but it's a joy to travel together when our paths meet and to share our stories on this road. Once upon a time, there was a man named Johannes Gutenberg. He changed the world when he invented an efficient way to print words on paper by using movable type. There were books published before his printing press, like Chaucer's, but most of them were copied by hand. What Gutenberg did was make books accessible. And what he printed, and then others printed, were Bibles, making the sacred word available to more people than the ecclesiastic elite. Common people could learn Scripture. Once upon a time, the Bible, with Hebrew and Christian texts, was the book of the Western world. For many people, it's still the only book to which they'll give credence. And once upon a time, some people looked beyond the Bible and brought reading into their everyday lives. They would read for business and for entertainment and for religious guidance. But reading is a spiritual act, Bible or no. I respect that the Bible and other texts can be read and followed for what people can elicit from words, but those are people's words, told and written through the ages. Humans making meaning of the universe and each other. I need more than the stories in the Bible to make meaning in the 21st century. At some point, we don't want to wait for the next once upon a time. We seek out stories. We see that many stories come from books, and we figure out that by learning to read, we can get more stories. What does Once Upon a Time say to you? Listen to the story. Marcel Proust wrote that reading is at the threshold of spiritual life. It can introduce us to it. It does not constitute it. I agree that it doesn't constitute it, but I think reading does more than provide an introduction. Reading is not spirit, but it is spirituality. If you have trouble with the term spiritual, consider what the agnostic Robert Ingersoll once said. Spirituality is all of this world. It is a child of the earth, born and cradled here. It comes from no heaven, but it makes a heaven where it is. There is no possible connection between superstition and the spiritual, or between theology and the spiritual. We can engage in spiritual practice without reading, such as with contemplation, meditation, or prayer, which are also often practiced with reading, but we definitely engage in the spiritual, however you define the term, by reading. Hence Scripture, sacred text, but also hence imagination, the creation of pictures and people you've never seen, only read about, and it's you, along with the author, who imbues them with character, personality, spirit. Hermann Hesse put it well when he wrote, "With all peoples, the word and writing are holy and magical. Naming and writing were originally magical operations, magical conquests of nature through the spirit. And everywhere the gift of writing was thought to be of divine origin. With most peoples, writing and reading were secret and holy arts reserved for the priesthood alone. It was a great and remarkable undertaking when a young man decided to acquire these mighty arts. It was not easy. It was reserved for the few and had to be paid for with dedication and sacrifice. From the standpoint of our democratic civilizations, the spirit in those days was something rarer, but also nobler and holier than today. Toilsome roads led to it. It had divine protection and was not offered to everyone gratis. We can only dimly imagine what it was like in a hierarchic, aristocratic culture in the midst of an illiterate folk to possess the secret of writing. It meant distinction and power. It meant white and black magic. It was a talisman and a magic wand. Reading has a holy and magical aspect, and books give us history and the concept of humanity. Books have been my work and my play, my education and my entertainment. My writing is in books, though I haven't yet had my name on the spine as an author. When I was religion editor for The Blade, I wrote book reviews. Before I went to seminary, I worked in the publishing industry, and in school, I kept my hand in it as an editor. Before my editorial career, I was involved with books in other ways. As a high school student, I read the American Booksellers Association manual and thought about owning a bookstore. I ended up working in one, not owning. Had I become an independent bookseller, I would have faced the challenge of the big chain bookstores and now of online sales, as even the chains are struggling to keep the doors open. So it's good I didn't become a merchant. I went to library school too, and libraries are still centered on books. I would say that all of this work with books is my effort to embody the spirituality of and in books. My ministry is sacred work with people. Part of that sacred work is with and by text, with sacred text, with books. I'm a Unitarian Universalist who wrestles with the concept that all text can be sacred. There's an inherent worth and dignity argument. Certainly we look everywhere for our scripture, but in some places it won't be found. The magic of ink marks on paper isn't always uplifting. Maybe it's the way the words are strung together. I honor the Bible being the base of many people's theology, the part of their belief system that they can touch and proclaim. And I honor other religions' similar attitudes to their holy books. But I also see that even sacred text is dangerous when taken literally and followed blindly. A religious ancestor whom Unitarians identify with is Michael Servetus, a man whose books got him burned at the stake, whose reading of Scripture challenged blind allegiance. If you haven't read Out of the Flames by Lawrence and Nancy Goldstone about Servetus's banned book, Christianity Restored, of which only 3 copies survive, one of them being the copy of John Calvin, the person responsible in part for the burning, I recommend it. Servetus was seen to be heretical to his society, and we follow as heretics today. Henry David Thoreau, a Unitarian, wrote, "Most men are satisfied if they read or hear read, and perchance have been convicted by the wisdom of one good book, the Bible, and for the rest of their lives vegetate and dissipate their faculties in what is called easy reading." We Unitarian Universalists are not most men. There's an old joke that the one good book for Unitarians is Robert's Rules of Order, but we've even grown heretical to Robert's rules. Not only have we become a religion that looks everywhere for our sacred text, for our scripture, but we truly value the use of books to impart information. The Unitarian Universalist Association operates a press to publish books that can be of interest to the general public, Beacon Press. It also runs a press for Unitarian Universalist interests, Skinner House Books. I served on the Unitarian Universalist Association's Melcher Book Award Committee, which bestowed a prize for the most significant contribution to religious liberalism published within the past year. We Unitarian Universalists go for more than just easy reading. like Thoreau, we know the value of a book. I hold out not just hope, but confidence that books will continue to be a major part of the world's advancement, even as formatting and style and medium and even languages change. Books have shaped my spirituality, perhaps especially during my education as a minister. Not just scripture, though it's been enlightening to read the sacred words of other religions. And not just in giving me inspiration for good ministry. Reading is meditative, regardless whether the content is intentional moral lesson or the big beach read of the summer. Not that those categories exclude each other. The spirituality that I find in books and in stories has shaped my view of religion too. I see so much of church that is based in story. Besides the sacred text, and important to my liberal religion, there are the stories that we each bring to the congregation. What do we tell one another about us and our backgrounds, about where we want to be, about what we can do together? The individual stories put together make the story of the congregation, and it's our personal searching and collective religious exercise that keeps us coming to church, even church online in live stream. Through our stories, we can listen and learn, celebrate and consolate, calm worries and ease troubles. As our stories continue, our faith in one another can be strengthened. And sometimes books are church. In this time when once upon a time feels quaint because of instant communication and text messages instead of books, when it seems a pilgrimage to Canterbury is by Zoom and not a long walk full of tales, we must take care to keep the spirituality. What does once upon a time say to you? My hope is that you want to hear what's next, that you want to read the stories to come. Once upon a time is not something to be put away with outgrown clothes. Once upon a time is an eternal beginning. Listen for the story and read. So be it.
Now please join us in number 320. The pen is greater. We'll do all five of us. will be played by our very own Bonnie Rowe. I Walk the Unfrequented Road by John White. And as y'all have explored that link online, I'd like to take a moment to dedicate the offering and recite with me. We dedicate this offering to the support and good work of First Unitarian Church of Toledo in this community and in the world.
So it's time for coming soon. What's coming up in our congregation? Next week, for our 10 o'clock Spiritual Adventures Forum, the adult religious education hour, it's Wild Adventure, Lightening Your Mood, Laughs Sunday with Krista, presented by Krista Schneider and you. So I'm told what you need to do is to submit in advance recordings or videos of your favorite non-offensive, clean jokes for an entire program of laughs in the midst of a pandemic. And look in our First Unitarian Church of Toledo media for the email address because Krista would like you to send them directly to her. And next Sunday's 11 a.m. service is a big service for us every year, and we'll see how it goes this year. It's our annual flower ceremony. It's also the sesquicentennial of Norbert Chopik, who developed the flower ceremony for Unitarians early in the 20th century at his church in Prague. So while we have normally asked people to bring a flower to the congregation and take a different flower home, and we get to explore and enjoy the beauty and the community that way. This year, since we're having these services online, what we're asking is for you to submit photographs that you took of flowers. And again, check our First Unitarian Church of Toledo media for the email address for you to send your pictures of flowers. And we're just going to string them all together, and we hope we'll have flowers, pictures entirely all the way through the service. And then we get to...
Please also stick around and join us for coffee hour after our virtual service. The Zoom meeting number and password are up on the screen. Take a moment to jot that down, or links will be available in your FYI or on the group Facebook.
And again, for the members of our congregation who are watching, please remember to mark your ballots and mail them in. They have to be received here by June 8th to be counted. We had our annual meeting last week, and now we are in the process of gathering votes on 4 items from that meeting. For our closing words, they come from Theodore Parker. And give me a moment, because... And Theodore Parker once said, "Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love, its profession of faith divine living. Let us go everywhere, into the world, to our books, our televisions and computers, our games and our work, to our loved ones and to our neighbors. And in the spirit of the story, may we live happily ever after.
And as we send our flame today, the reading is by Elizabeth Zell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These will carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please join us for the recessional. When our heart is in a holy place, we'll go ahead and do one verse.
Good, that's good. Very good.